Hey everyone, it's Dr. LJ, and this is our monthly mastermind. And for context, we are in November of the year 2022. And I am so excited because we have Susan Proctor, who is going to teach us about wealth dynamics for entrepreneurs. And just really briefly, how I met Susan was 3 years ago in Southern Florida. She was doing a retreat. It was on CBD because here in Florida, we can't go out there, for cannabis. And we spoke on the phone and we felt so connected. And I have to say that it was just such a classy event. It was wonderful. I met Lana, who some of you met a few weeks ago, who was collaborating on the brain fitness instructor and coaching program. And Susan and I, we know we're going to be doing lots of things together. We have done a hormone webinar, which is in the webinar library, and we're doing another one in January for hormones for health. That is her specialty, but we were speaking a little beforehand. Susan comes from the world of Wall Street. She was, ran a big bank in Wall Street and then just kind of really wanted to live her bliss with wellness. And she's been a wellness entrepreneur and just doing so many things. So I'm just going to turn it over to you now and mute myself along with everybody. Susan, welcome.
Thank you so much. You did overstate it a little bit. I didn't run a major bank on Wall Street, but I will brag a little bit. I was a vice president of Bankers Trust Company when I was 27 years old. And interestingly, when we get to the heart of what we're looking at tonight, even though I was in a very different field then than I am now, I still intuitively was doing the things that were playing to my strengths, and I'll explain when I get there, because even though I was in a what you might think of as a left brain kind of industry, my functional title there was relationship manager. I've only ever worked with people in anything I've ever done. And look, when I learned about wealth dynamics, it helped me understand a good deal of that. So thank you for that introduction. And I am going to take advantage of the screen share here because I did put something together for this evening that I think will make it more interesting and easy. So we are here to talk about wealth dynamics. And I think specifically, LJ, for wellness entrepreneurs, because we are, I think, a kind of special breed of entrepreneur that has come to this mostly for contribution and service. And I think that distinguishes us a little bit. So it is, November, amazingly, that we made it all the way to November. And here we are. And just to introduce myself a little bit to those of you who I hadn't met before, it says on my LinkedIn profile that I'm a visionary wellness entrepreneur. And I think that's probably the best way that I would describe myself these days in a, overall sense. I was, as I said, a vice president in New York City. I have an MBA in finance, which again, you might not guess just by looking at me these days. And I've been an Ayurvedic practitioner for the past 30 years. So I've very much been legitimately in the wellness field as a practitioner. I'm certified in a bunch of other things as well, including hypnotherapy that we share, and NLP and hormone balance, and I work with the blood types. So one of my specialties, if I may, is that I for a long time, and this may be true still, I was the only practitioner in the world that was certified both in Ayurvedic medicine and in the blood type science. So, where there's 3 constitutional types in Ayurveda and 4 blood types, of course. And in my system, there are 12 archetypes. And what I have discovered over the past 20 years since I developed this is you really can't get a complete perspective of your own ideal being and how to care for it without looking at both sides of that equation. So that's something I'm very proud to be sharing with the world. And and again, I'll explain that I haven't had somebody like Christina helping me create the digital content, out of all of this stuff. So not all of my work is out there yet because I'm still in process like everybody else. But I just recently launched a beautiful women's wellness online membership organization called Divina Rising. The founder of Get Your Juicy Back has been the name of my company. I have a weekly show on Win Win Women TV that LJ was a guest recently, and we had just an awesome time talking about spiritual wellness, and that's when you reconnected with Lana. And I'm also working on another project with a multi-billionaire in Ireland called Global Wellness Transformation, where he's actually excited about using his resources to support some of the things that we're talking about. So this business thing can get, really very exciting, and I'm very excited about it. And as LJ mentioned, my specialties are in women's wellness, hormone balance, and weight management. But I love all the entrepreneurial stuff. And today we're going to be speaking about wealth dynamics. So I want to just give you a little background. And there's the little chart here that I'm going to be sharing a few larger versions. So it'll make a bit more sense. But what you can see here, if the letters are large enough, is that there are 8 different types in this system that we call wealth dynamics. And these are different wealth profiles. And I'm going to be describing them in a fair amount of detail because I'm hoping and assuming that everybody is going to get some really good clues tonight about yourselves and about your strengths, and about some more distinctions about team building and collaboration than we came into this with. Because when I was introduced to this 15 years ago in Australia, I had the good fortune to be living in Melbourne for a couple of years, and I was invited to some free event at a hotel with this gentleman named Roger Hamilton. And he did this presentation, and it was very life-changing for me. It's been very powerful for many people that I've shared it with, because even though this isn't my primary offering, or it hasn't been up until now, I do talk about it whenever I get the chance, and it usually turns people on. And I've gotten feedback that of all of the personal development, profiling perspectives that people have come across, this one has been, the most powerful for a lot of people that I know. So it was developed by this guy named Roger Hamilton, and he is half Chinese and half Scottish. And that's actually quite relevant here because this is based on Chinese energies. So, in the same way we, most of us, I'm guessing, are familiar with Chinese medicine as a form of healing, and with feng shui as another aspect of Chinese wisdom that looks at different energies. I kind of think of wealth dynamics as a personal feng shui map to universal flow. And I'll be saying, obviously a bit more about that. And for many years, wealth dynamics hadn't really come to this part of the world. And I used to say jokingly that I think the reason ultimately that I got married and moved to Australia at that time was to be introduced to this, because it hadn't come to this part of the world yet. And it was really tremendously illuminating for me. So we're going to delve into it a bit more. So one of the aspects of this, and we were already starting to touch on it, is about finding our natural flow. The world that we live in and the conditioning that most of us have experienced, we've been taught that to be successful in life, we have to go out and work hard and make it happen. And I certainly recognize that there's effort, required in life. Just, sitting and meditating, millions of dollars don't usually show up in our mailbox, just from visualization. I think we're beyond some of the naivete of some of that. Although our intentions are very, very powerful. But we probably all had the experience of, if something's just not flowing and it's not working, it doesn't matter how much effort you put in. It's like banging your head against a wall. There's things that you just kind of can't force to happen. And on the other hand, when you're sort of in alignment with your purpose and your gifts, the phone rings, or you strike up a conversation with somebody in the supermarket that, happens to have exactly what you were looking for and can introduce you to exactly who you needed to talk to. And there's no amount of effort that can make that happen. So I like to think of our actions ideally being inspired, not just, banging our head against a wall and dissipating our energies, but really inspired by a higher purpose and a higher alignment. And what we were starting to chat about before we started the recording, so I want to say this again, is that as I mentioned a few minutes ago, I think wellness entrepreneurs are a kind of special breed of entrepreneur, because we came, into this field to help people. And so sometimes the whole concept of making money and looking at the business aspect of this can be distasteful to some people because of the business world that we came from. So I wanted to just reframe that a bit. And we were talking about that even if you're not in this for the money per se, we all do have an opportunity to create conscious wealth, to do really good things in the world with. And I think that is a worthy thing to be thinking about. And even if, somebody is not an entrepreneur at heart, the way, I feel that I am, and the business aspect of what they're doing isn't, the most exciting, we still do need to support ourselves and our families. And so, living in a state of flow is way better than banging our head against a wall. So I would say, whatever your aspirations are, it's really valuable to be considering some of the things I'm going to be sharing about tonight. And it really is a way of magnifying our gifts to the world. So one of the questions that I ask all the time, I think people get a little bit tired of it almost, but I always, whoops, I went a little too far here. Oops. I always ask people when I meet them, it's one of my first questions, especially in a business context, is what are your superpowers? And people are often not used to that question. I mean, I'm being a little, humorous here, and some of the ones that I'm showing on this graphic are obviously not the ones that we would be talking about. But I really do recognize, and this is something I've been very sensitized to by working with wealth dynamics for the past 15 years, that we all have natural gifts. And what I've noticed is that, especially with women, but I think with people in general, because we have so been conditioned to, like the hard work ethic, is that most people I have found tend to disregard their gifts because they come so easily to us that we assume that they're not that valuable. If we haven't been making a lot of effort, it can't be worth that much. And Roger actually turns that on its head and kind of suggests that, most of us come from an educational system where we're encouraged to put extra effort into the things that we're not that good at. And he's saying, no, identify what your gifts and strengths are and play to those. Don't worry about anything else. It's a waste of your time. Focus on your lane. And if there's something missing from your skill set or your toolkit, that's a perfect opportunity to collaborate with other people and to outsource. But it doesn't make sense for us to be doing things that don't come, relatively easily to us. And this was mind-blowing to me. I know we're going to have some time to ask some questions later, and I'd love to explore this, with some of you. But this was really a new perspective to me, and to many people that I've shared it with. And I'm, going to leave that question hanging out there of, what are your superpowers? Because I've noticed that most people undervalue their greatest gifts because they come easily. And one of the ways that you can kind of get to a kind of clear answer is, what are the things that people come to you for? How are you known in your circle of friends and family? Are you the one that always, makes the best parties? Or are you the one who's like a really great problem solver? What those things are, that people who know you well come to you for those are really good clues about our superpowers and kind of the pathways to our most natural path to flow. So I love that concept. We'll be coming back to that. So with our wealth profiles, and I showed you that tiny little version of it, of the square. We're going to look at larger, more meaningful ones in a moment. But the way it works is that according to this system, there are 8 different wealth profiles, 8 different roles, 8 different competencies, and 8 different paths to wealth. And it's not that we get to choose one, it's just that we are one. And there is a test that we can take. I took it, many years ago, and I got a very detailed printout. It costs about $100, and if anybody's interested, I can hook you up. But my goal for tonight is to share this in such a way that you can get a very good clue about yourself. And if you wanted to refine that further, that's available. But I'm not specifically selling anything. I really wanted to share this wisdom tonight. So the way it works is we each have a primary profile. And then we're supported by the 2 adjoining ones. And I think that's kind of important because it's easier, I think, to be able to identify the 3 things that are our strengths rather than just the one. So I hope that'll become a little clearer when I show them to you more specifically. And this, again, what I've observed over the years really does help us access our most natural path to flow. So I'm going to show you next 2 different versions of that square that I found, and one I embellished a bit. And this one is going to be way easier to read than the one that we looked at before. So I'm going to kind of explain that we start at the top with the creator, and then there are 8 different profiles as we go around the square in a clockwise direction. And the way this, we were saying this relates to Chinese energies is the Chinese energies that are reflected here in the words up top by dynamo energy, on the left with blaze, on the bottom with tempo, and on the left with steel. Those are kind of derived from the Chinese system, and they correspond to the seasons. So spring is where things start. When we go into summer, autumn, winter, it's a cycle, of course. And in business, the way it works is that the creators are typically most focused on products, on what they or their businesses are going to be offering. And I've added here the questions that are in that pinkish color. I've added those to this because to me that really helps identify a lot. Is that each of the profiles tends to excel in answering 1 or 2 of these types of questions. And so the creators, or the first wealth profile that's the easiest to see, they're the ones that come up with the ideas. They're very creative. They tend to design the products, and they are all about answering the question of what do I create next? What's the next trend? It's about the what. And obviously that's really valuable because that's where everything starts. As I'll be describing, creators don't tend to be that good at running businesses. And so one of the values of knowing this is knowing who else we need to have on our team that brings these, the skills and gifts and superpowers that we don't have. So that's the top of the square. On the right side is the summer, and people on the right are usually much more focused on the people than the products. We're about the people. And so the questions that we answer are all about the who. Now, I'm going to be using myself as an example tonight because of the group here, I'm the only one whose profile I know, and I know it pretty well. So I'll be able to make a little bit of illustration. And I think I mentioned a little while ago that even though I'm in a very different field now than I was when I was in banking and finance, I was still always working with people. I was a relationship manager in those days. I wasn't working with facts and figures. I was still working with people. And the wealth profile that I'm identified with is called the supporter, being all about the people. At the bottom, we have the energy of tempo and autumn, and people who really shine in that area. They are all about the when. You know, when is this going to happen? They actually make things happen. It's a beautiful thing. I need those people around me. They're very good at the details and about grounding things. And then on the left, we have the energy of steel and the season of winter. And those people are very good at the systems. And the questions that they tend to answer really very well are about the how. How do we do this? And how do we do it better? They're really great at that. So the way it works, again, with the 8, is that the 4 that I just described are kind of in the middle of each of those sides. And then the ones on the corner are kind of a combination. So it starts with the creator. And then the person that's the star is the one that is really good at branding and about shining things out in the world. Supporters are all about the people and the team. At the bottom right corner are the deal makers. They're kind of a combination of the people and the timing. So they're really good at making deals in business. At the bottom, that type is called traders. And we tend not to see many of them out in the world because most of them really are on Wall Street. In fact, one of the things that I've noticed, and we might tonight, I'm curious to hear, but in the wellness field and among coaches and practitioners of all types, we tend to find most people in the Dynamo Blaze section. Most people who have some of these other gifts don't tend to end up in this field, although there can be exceptions. But well, I'll be curious to hear from you a little bit later what you might be resonating with the most, because it's usually the what and who people that tend to be in a coaching and in a wellness type of field most of the time. As I said, traders are usually on Wall Street because they're so good at that. And then on the left, on the bottom left, accumulators are a combination of the when and the how, and they accumulate assets is their path to wealth. I'll be showing you that on the next slide a little bit more clearly. The lords are like landlords. They own stuff and they manage them well. They manage assets. And then at the upper left are the mechanics. They're the ones that are really, really good at systems. And what I was sharing with LJ a little while ago is this model relates to individuals. So, each of us will have a certain wiring, certain access to flow. It'll describe different phases of a business cycle, as well as the life of a business. And the systematizing things is usually a step that mature entities get to the place where it makes sense to set up systems. When you're dealing with ideas, that's premature. The entity, the project has to come to a place where it's systemizable, or whatever the word would be. So I was saying to LJ, that it kind of makes sense that you're getting to that, because that reflects a mature organization that really benefits from tightening those things up. So this is the way to be thinking about this. And then I'm going to show it to you in another version to ideally make a little bit more sense. And this is putting some examples to it of people that we know out in the world that are very successful, because it seems to me that people who are very successful intuitively know about these things, and they do explore their strengths and kind of focus on their lane and all of that stuff. So at the top, the dynamo wood, that's another aspect of the Chinese energy, spring creator. The example that they're offering there is Richard Branson. Other examples of creators would be Walt Disney, Steve Jobs, people who are really brilliant thinkers and creators and don't make the mistake of trying to run their businesses. They create and they hand things off to their team, and then they go back and create some more. And that's ideally how a creator would function. And one of the things that Roger talks about, what creators have been told most of their lives, you've got get your head out of the clouds, come back down to earth. And he says, no, stay up in the clouds. That's where you get all of your wisdom and inspiration. Don't try to play anybody else's game. The people at the bottom of this square, the traders, who are not only on Wall Street, they can be in many other fields. They have that sensory ability. Creators are more intuitive, but these people are more sensory, and they're connected to what's going on in the world. They have their ear to the ground, but a creator would not really be very good at that. So Roger says, stay up in the clouds where you do your best work. And again, that's not how our school system works. So on the upper right, we've got a star, and we have Oprah as a really good example of that. Because stars are often stars, like movie stars and all of that, and that that's how they've achieved their success. But they're also often very good at branding and about creating other people as stars. And she's just, done a brilliant job of that. So she's a good example of a star. Others, who have done some, major branding, like Martha Stewart is a star, people like that, who, like Tiger Woods, people who lend their names as celebrity endorsers or stars. That's an aspect of wealth creation that's available to them because of the power of their brands. On the right here, the supporters. Again, that's the one that I am in a fairly extreme way, and I'll say a little bit more about that in a little bit, because I'll share with you what my test results actually looked like and why this was so powerful for me. I think it's Jack Welch who they're showing there. He was the the CEO of GE. It's interesting. It's a little harder to find supporters out there as really good role models. I think the gal that founded Etsy or eBay was a supporter and was a really good example of that, of leadership being their path to success. Now, here at the bottom is a picture of Donald Trump, and without getting political, because I really try not to get political, this chart is kind of old. And he was traditionally used as the example of a deal maker. I would make the observation that that's not really accurate. He never really was very successful at deal making, even though he wrote books about it and claimed that. His success, to the extent that he has had any, to me, is actually as a star, as a The Apprentice and more recent things. He's not making money doing deals. He's making money with his brand. So I don't think that's accurate. But I think this was developed before the world learned more about him. So my 2 cents there. At the bottom, that guy is a trader. I think it's Jack Soros. Again, Earth, Autumn, Tempo Energy. The bottom left is Warren Buffett. Accumulators buy for the long haul. They don't buy and sell all the time like traders do. I'm not sure who that guy is on the left, but examples of lords would be like the Rockefellers, people who own assets. And then in the upper left, we've got Zuckerberg. So mechanics who have created systems. And what, Roger said it was, Jeff Bezos made a fortune of money, with Amazon as a mechanic. He never created any products. That wasn't his path to wealth. It was creating a major system to distribute products very widely. Tiger Woods made a fortune from his Nike endorsements. He never made a sneaker. Each of these people has created great wealth in very different ways. Warren Buffett says, I've just put out to the world what I'm looking for, and I wait for the phone to ring. And he'll buy and hold for the long term. So these are very different strategies for creating wealth. And as I said, I think people who are very successful intuitively understand this or learn about it along the way. And I'm thinking that I am going to just offer an example, and I'm going to use myself as I said I would, because I don't know about any of your profiles yet, but I want to give you at least one example of how and why this can be really, really valuable. When I took the test, and that's one of the interesting things, is I've seen lots and lots of people's tests over the past 15 years. And so, there's a test that shows the percentage that we each have in each of these four areas. And I've met people, there's an algorithm that forces a particular answer. So theoretically, somebody could be about equal. If somebody was completely equal, they would have 25% in each area. And I've never seen that, but I've seen, like 28% as being the highest number, where some people are fairly stable and they have a good amount of ability in all these areas. And people like that could be really good general managers, or, pretty effective one-man bands. And I've met people like that, and I'm a little envious of them because they're more self-sufficient than I am. What I learned from myself when I took the test, I'll just put a couple of numbers to this. I had 60% blaze energy, 24 dynamo, 16 tempo, and 0 steel. Literally 0 steel. Now, I was 52 years old, or I was a few days before my 52nd birthday when I learned this. And it was amazing because I used to get stuck in my life regularly, that I would have all these ideas and projects and all this other stuff. And then I would get to a point where I did not know how to take the next step. And when I found out about this, it really made a lot of sense, because that how question, I have nothing there, like almost nothing there. I suck at how questions. I have mastery about the who. So I'm a lot less self-sufficient than somebody whose abilities were more well-rounded. But when I learned about this, it was an amazing gift, because over these years, I completely re-educated myself. And my mantra is, my how is always who. Because I recognized all of this and realized that because I have that 60% blaze, and I've used it so effectively, I have such a strong network that I am never more than a phone call away from getting an answer about how to do something. And I don't enter into anything these days without knowing that I have support in that area, because I know it would fail. Now that, again, we're all very different. So that might not be exactly the same for you, but I wanted to offer this as an illustration of how it could be beneficial to each of us, seeing if we have something really missing, or if we have a real area of mastery that we didn't realize we could just focus on and not worry about the rest of the stuff. So that's an example from one person where this completely changed my life, like completely. And I came up with, and before we leave this slide, I just want to just say a little bit about what's in the middle here, because he has a few very valuable things here. The V times L is his definition of wealth creation, is value times leverage. So in that formula, the opportunity that we each have is to discover our greatest value and connect with other people to leverage that value, because you can't leverage your own value. So like we were saying before, a couple of examples, Tiger Woods never made a sneaker. Somebody else had the value of the sneaker. He was able to leverage that for them by magnifying its, perception in the world. So part of the idea here is, for true wealth creation at the level that these people are working at, you cannot do it alone. Can't, the big success is done in teams. And I'm going to suggest they need to be the right teams. And this offers us some really wonderful distinctions, I believe, of how to create the right teams. So I came up, this is my concept. I came up with this idea of a stable table because I am a very unstable table. So picture if it was me on my own, I would have, let's say, 2 legs that were really high and 2 that were really low, and the whole thing would not be stable. So I have choices. I could either dumb myself down, to the level of my lower legs, or I can have people as part of my team that have the car's legs that are short for me, to have high ones. But I think that the idea of a stable table is a really important one for any company or entity or project, because at this point in my life, I have seen a lot of great ideas that did not come to fruition. And I've spent a lot of time looking at why things didn't succeed. And I'm going to suggest that it's often that it wasn't a stable table. So, like going back to the example of the what, who, when, how, an example of something that could fail would be a company that has a great product, but they just never got their customer service together because they put all, the founder was a creator and, put all of his or her focus into that, and they never really got the business together. Or, some company that has amazing sales force, and marketing, but the product's not really that good. Or they might have all of that together, but the business management is such that they're not paying attention to their, their inflows and outflows, and they financially don't make it. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons that businesses can fail. And I'm going to suggest that it's because the table wasn't stable and that they didn't have all the legs, adequate. So to me, this is really, really valuable focus in building a team, because I think many of us have a tendency to attract people that are like us. And I can look back on projects that I was working on, before I knew about this, where, I had a whole bunch of supporters around me, and we all had great energy, but stuff didn't get done. Like that. So I'm very aware these days of, and I call people in. I have intentions about, I want to attract, a person with these particular gifts. And interestingly, they're showing up. So we get to build teams and collaborate with the right people. I think this is also really valuable for those of us in our field, because many of us are working with VAs, and virtual assistants can have all different skill sets. So it's probably very valuable to recognize for each of us what's missing on our square, and make sure that the supports that we're hiring are filling in the things that we need. Because again, without having these distinctions, it's easy just to hire a VA and still have a team that doesn't have a stable table, because we haven't made sure that each of the legs was being, solid. And one of the other things that's really cool is, because we each have access to 3 profiles, the primary one and the 2 adjoining ones, you only need 3 people to complete the square. You don't need all 8. So I'm going to show you next what that looks like. It's called the 1, 2, 3 approach. So actually, let me go back to this one. Again, I'm going to use myself as an example just for the moment. So I'm a supporter for sure. So I'm in the number 1 spot. So in a perfect world, if I was putting together a team with just 3 people, the 2 other profiles that I would need on my team for my table to be stable would be a trader, because I'm in the number 1 spot. The number 2 spot would be 2 steps away. So 1, 2. And then the 3rd member of my team to complete the square would be 3 more steps away. So 1, 2, 3. So for me, a team of 3 that could contribute to a stable table would involve me as the supporter, a trader who grounds things and, takes care of the details and stuff, and a mechanic that systemizes things. Because again, I don't have any head for that. That would be a stable table. So again, we're going to have some time to discuss all of this. And I hope you're all getting some insights about yourselves. And I just put together this little chart for whatever your primary wealth profile is. If you're the number one, I've kind of shown here what the other two profiles are that would be a scenario that would complete your team and have a stable table. And of course, LJ, I'm happy to share, this material, in any way that makes sense, as well as it being on the recording. This to me it's a really insightful little piece. And
sorry, I was just going to say we can provide them with links, after the fact. And
okay,
sure. And even if you want to, we can also put this in the webinar library if you want to share, the
happy to
your document. Okay,
happy to.
This is fascinating. So I'm going out now.
No, and that's pretty much the content that I wanted to offer tonight. Interestingly, I gave this presentation to Win-Win Women as part of their training, and they asked me to come back for a second one because they were so blown away by it. But I think this is enough to chew on for now, and I would love to chat about what the insights that you've gotten, and maybe answer some questions so that you can hone in on this for yourself. So I'll just complete this by saying I would love to stay in touch. And this is where you can find me. I've got, a website and an email address. I have my show every week on Mondays, that on the Win-Win TV, and I've got the new membership thing. So just wanted to,
I want you to, before we leave, tell us a little bit about Davina Rising too.
I'd be happy to do that. But I think I can stop the share for now, and we can maybe interact a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm going to open up for people to ask their questions. But an observation that came to me is that, we are really, as coaches, we're solopreneurs. We're even more than entrepreneurs. We're solopreneurs, and it almost just, I had this feeling came to me is that maybe that is where our success is, and why we're so interested in getting together and gathering and doing these retreats, because maybe we are supposed to square each other's tables. It hit me that instead of just working as an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, maybe that's ultimately, all of you precious people who are watching this either on the replay or here with us today, maybe this is really eventually where we're all going, to support one another like that. And to, for certainly, I have an idea of which might be mine, and I definitely need the supporters, and that's what's helped me grow over the years. But guys, please, let's just have an open discussion.
Yeah,
I'm going to go ahead and put us back on, go ahead.
I was just wanting to respond to what you just said, and then I'd love to hear from everybody else, because what the creator supporter combination is one of the classic ones. Many creators are attracted to this because it appeals to creative minds, obviously. So lots of creators are attracted to this. And so if they're in the number one spot, the number two spot is a supporter. It's a perfect combination. And Lana, for example, is a creator, like we got on, it's perfect because creators have all these ideas. And then ideally, they talk to somebody like me who says, oh, that's awesome. Let me introduce you to my friend LJ. Let me have you on my show. I'm doing this. I have some retreats. You would be perfect as a presenter. You need to hand it off to the next person who can get it out in the world. That's awesome. What I noticed, though, is without the third spot, often nothing happens. Like without that grounding. And what I will tell you before that grounding.
I think that's third spot. What are they called? The third spot is the.
Well, for the third spot for a creator, the number one would be the creator. The number two would be the supporter.
The
and
accumulator.
The number three would be an accumulator.
Accumulator.
And by the way, those roles, and I'll just say a couple of things. One is there's a very, very good ebook that describes all of this in more detail and is free, that I can share that or the link or whatever. So if anybody's interested in this, that would be a very good way to explore this a bit more. There's a little paperback book available on Amazon that Roger wrote called Your Life, Your Legacy. That's brilliant, that elaborates on all of this a lot more. You know, the test elaborates on things more. But again, I've seen people get so much value just from what I've shared tonight, you know, with you.
Roger, what's his last name again?
Hamilton.
Hamilton. Okay, I'm writing this in the chat too.
So those are some other resources that we would have now. And the last thing that I'll say before I want to open it up is, as the supporter, I've needed a trader as part of my team, kind of desperately. And I put out a cosmic request for the perfect person. And she showed up in my life. She's not on Wall Street. She's actually an event planner, and she lives here in Florida. And when we went to the Wyndham last year, you know, we showed up for this meeting, and she had a binder with all the documents printed out and color coded and alphabetized. And I was like, you know, I desperately need someone like that, because my energy is all over this and it's not very detailed.
Oh, wait a minute. We just froze.
Oriented, and that's really, oops.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're back.
Okay now. Yeah, I think we're good. Yeah, I don't know whether it's my internet or what, every once in a while. I'm going to put us on gallery so that everybody feels like we can just have a conversation, and please unmute yourselves. Christina, when you watch that, like what do you think, you know, where do you think you're at?
So I'm a mechanic, hardcore. I think at a previous
I knew that.
at a previous point in my career, I think I really identified as a helper. So I tried to put myself more in a supporter role, and that's not really where my strengths are. And I've really shifted that as I've kind of come into my own in my career and just my endeavors. But I thought it was great. I think it's a really interesting way to conceptualize things. And I think LJ, you like made the point about a solopreneur. And I think not only is it an opportunity to look for connection and support in those areas, but it's also an opportunity to go, okay, these are my strengths. Let me use more of these. But hey, I could actually work on these things too. Or let me use tools. Let me find automation tools and other technology tools that can kind of fill in some of these gaps. And I think that's how we can approach it as a solopreneur that's not quite ready to build out a team. Though I think a lot of us probably could be ready to build out a team and we just don't realize it.
That's why I use the term outsourcing, Christina, because I think even if like you have a VA, like I would know I need a VA that's really great at systems. I don't need her to do client follow-up. Like
so you have like Upworthy, you're thinking like VAs or get something like Upworthy that you find the people or the systems or something like that. Yeah. What do you think?
I know a woman who has a VA firm that I want to talk to about incorporating some of this, because one of the things I wanted to say to Christina, and anyone who in the wellness coaching field who finds themselves not in the creator star supporter area, you are so valuable because we need you. You're more rare.
So what do you think most coaches are though? I mean, where would most coaches fall in?
Like I said, I've seen most coaches in the creator star supporter section. Because think about it. People who are coaches like working with people. I would be surprised, if a lot of lords ended up in a coaching practice, because they're more introverted.
Yeah.
Right. Creators tend to enjoy creating stuff, including a practice and things. And so that's one of the things that I've given some thought to in terms of, some potential mentoring. If you are a coach and an entrepreneur and want to expand your business, if you're a creator, you might think about products that you want to put out that, that complement your practice, either, books or workbooks or tools. I've known people who've developed, their own tarot decks, or, like they can create stuff. Stars might be thinking of a larger business model where they're, let's say, doing things like having a podcast or a show and inviting others on and being in that star role. I'm doing some of that because that's one of my adjoining ones. But I think without that extroverted energy, people probably wouldn't find themselves in a coaching role. But I'm curious what everybody else thinks.
Stacy, what did you think?
It's definitely extremely interesting from my perspective because I'm a teacher, and I have over 25 years now coming from the educational system that you mentioned. There's a little bit of that history of the educational systems really taking the initiative to teach to the deficits and to try to, support that much more so than just looking at the strength areas and capitalizing on those. And I guess a better way to say it, like pigeonholing people. Mm-hmm. And I teach at the high school level, so I think there's also, maybe there used to be more pigeonholing than nowadays because of a global society. So I do think there is progress in that area, trying to help teach the girls that I work with to really have that broad perspective of all of their opportunities. But again, when there's so much standardized testing, which obviously is like plagued our country, that's where
pigeonholing right there, yeah.
That's where we fall apart because, the flow of money coming to the schools is based on those test scores. And what's the first thing, we look at? Test scores. And then that's usually deficit areas. So I found this interesting. I saw myself definitely in the creator category as my
One of the things I want to just reiterate, and you might be a very well-rounded creator. So again, actually, I want to just speak to the pigeonhole thing because I feel pretty strongly about this. I love these different models that give us more self-awareness. And I always say that to me, their value is in describing us, not defining us. So I feel very strongly about that with Ayurvedic, constitutional types. Like, these are not intended to be labels that pigeonhole us further. To me, they're distinctions, for more self-awareness. And I would also say, and if any of this doesn't fit, then just throw it out. It's only intended to be valuable. And if it's not valuable to you, I won't be offended.
Yeah, I think it's strength glorifying. And that's why I'm starting to think maybe that's the direction that even the academy we should move into in like postgraduate. How can we create these teams, among our alumni, that where they can all, glow. Like, Christina, we've been kind of talking about that, so I think instinctively, because you're a mechanic and I'm a creator, we have felt that synergy, because I keep talking to you, you've got products, we've got to, get your products out there, and you understand the systems that you've taught me, so that's where maybe that's the strength, of, especially with women, we're feeling this big synergistic, that's what I think Susan and I bonded on, this really, we believe very much in a win-win situation, I'm very agendaless, I want everybody to be successful and I want everybody to be sovereign in their own right, and that is perhaps a model, Susan, I think more than anything, you've kind of awakened this potential for where we can go with this.
I'm thrilled about that. And if I'm going to say something else, just you can put that out on the side or not, depending on how this resonates. because we haven't spoken about this before, but I've done some very innovative work within Ayurvedic medicine, because when I discovered it 30 years ago, I knew that the way I was taught it was wrong. So I know I've worked with this before. And to make a long story short, I teamed up with a Vedic astrologer a number of years ago here in Florida, because we knew that in ancient India, Vedic astrologers and Ayurvedic doctors work together closely, because you can see in a person's Vedic chart exactly what's going on, the cause of disease, everything. It's a completely different system from Western astrology.
Yeah,
It's
it
based on
is.
a different zodiac. And in that system, your sign is not your sun sign, it's your rising. So you need to know your exact birth time. Anyway, we went back to the Vedas and I found out why I knew that the way I was taught classical Ayurveda was not quite correct. And what came out of that was we've been writing a book about the rising signs. And what I have discovered, and I share this with anybody who will listen, is that the combination of your wealth profile and your Vedic rising sign are the clearest breadcrumbs for that your soul left you for what it wanted you to accomplish in this lifetime. Been incredibly powerful.
We'll probably, we have to have you do something on
I would love
Vedic
that.
astrology for the spiritual wellness course. That
It would be awesome.
Yeah.
Because what I've done with that, I've really pioneered some stuff that we actually had a contract with Hay House.
Yes.
Whoops, got a
Yeah.
little interference here.
You can click your video on if you want.
I think Sam's been getting on a new hold on a second. Here, I muted him now.
Okay,
Sorry.
there you go. Done some very innovative things. And to me, for example, like the combination of a creator who's a Virgo is completely different from a creator who's an Aquarius. And in my case, I'm a supporter in this system, and I'm a Leo. I was mentioning that to you earlier, LJ,
Right.
in the Vedic system. So to me, these are soul decisions that we made before we came in, that we kind
Right.
of decided who we were going to be and what we're going to be up to. The things that I'm doing now are an ideal expression of those things for me. That as a supporter, one of my when I look at my own superpowers, what I say is I have two favorite ones, actually three. My first one is that I collect amazing people. And this is a wonderful expression of that, because when I meet people that I know are my peeps, I stay in touch, and I have, it's been over 3 years, and I'm pretty good about that. So I collect amazing people. The second one that I have, and this is really fun, is that I often can tell that there's a party that wants to happen, and I'm the one that sends the invitations. Because you were talking about the solopreneur thing, and how yummy it is for women to come together. That's my that's part of my thing. And you also had a chance to experience that, because that retreat was that kind of thing.
It was, I mean, the energy was just amazing,
And that was my doing. I will take credit, but the operations and the management, I had team members, because I can't do that stuff.
You did.
That couldn't have happened. I could not possibly have done that on my own.
Yeah, and I know that you had behind, it's hard to do those, but
they were amazing.
It was very
Masha was
seamless.
brilliant, and
Yeah,
we had an event planner. It was great. But my third superpower that I really love is helping other people find their superpowers.
Yeah, well, maybe that's a future thing. Megan, I would love to know your opinion. Like, what did you glean from this?
It's interesting to me because in my world, I'm an organizational development manager. So I train leaders how to have high performing teams, and I do DISC and productive index. So I've done a lot of different personalities. So as soon as you start talking about the personalities, I was able to identify myself based on those. Like in one of them, I'm called a maverick. In another one, I'm influential. So I think in this one, I'd be supporter. So I found that interesting. All the other ones that I'm very familiar with, all of us are pieces of all of them. So when you said you're 0 of the one, I was like, how does that work? So I found it intriguing, and I wanted to learn more about it. I love stuff like that. Like I love different things that help you identify what is your strengths and weaknesses and how you can play on that.
And by the way, Meg, most people that I've met don't have a 0.
Okay.
I'm a little unusual. And I've just offered that as an example that you may find either in yourself or someone that you're close to or a member of your team that might have, like a blind spot in their skill set. And for me, it's been particularly frustrating because it was really damaging. And I was grateful that I learned how to compensate for that. If you want to call it compensation, a strategy for optimizing what I do bring, which is really kind of awesome because the people that I'm bringing in to compliment me, the people with steel, it's usually a gift to them that I can say, you've got this to bring.
Like the guy in Ireland, Yeah, it's almost like,
Exactly.
and Steinbrecher used to say this in astrology, like if you look at your chart and you have apps, like I have no earth other than my rising sign, which is Capricorn. And so that's called an adept. You're an adept at that, because it's kind of almost buried in in the subconscious. So you're bringing it in as kind of an out picturing. It's there. It's just that, you don't recognize it in yourself kind of.
Well,
From a
there's
Jungian
another thing here
perspective.
that I think is valuable because we live in a very sophisticated marketing culture these days. And I'm actually a little irritated by now, because it's like we all know the right words to say or who to hire to write them for us. And things have gotten to me, a little bit slick. But when you get to, like something that's more real, I think it's very helpful to have distinctions when offers come at us to identify whether this is right for me or not. Because there's a lot of great stuff out there. I've attended so many things and taken advantage of lots of, introductory 20-minute, get acquainted calls, and gotten a lot of people's input. And at this point, I can pretty much identify that's good advice, but not for me.
Mm-hmm.
I had a conversation with somebody like, oh, well, you need to do this with social media, blah, blah, blah. And I said to her, that sounds like really great advice for somebody else. But I hate that. I don't do things I hate. And I'm so much more effective in person that it would be stupid of me to be spending my time developing that kind of thing. That's not my strength. That's something I recognize the value of it. It's important. I want to make that opportunity available to somebody that I can hire to do that for me, who is going to love it. Because you used the word bliss earlier, and I want to come back to that. That's part of what I think is really valuable here. I think this.
Yeah. I think having permission levels too means that you're not going to do
bliss.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also you come to a point in your career, which you did, Susan, that it's like you're not going to do what you don't want to do. I mean, you understand that you can't neglect that to have a successful business, but you understand that you need to find somebody to fill that puzzle piece,
Like,
Yoli, did you or Sam have anything that you wanted to contribute?
This is all new to me. I find it fascinating because I would love to know where I fall in that category. I know that I'm a people person. And I know that I like to support other people. But I'm at a point in my life right now trying to figure out where do I fit in, and how well it's going to be for me to be a coach, and how successful am I going to become? And this is great tools to learn to better understand yourself and to know what you can and cannot do so that it becomes successful. So it really has been an eye-opener for me, because I do struggle in some areas, and I'm realizing maybe I'm struggling in because that's my weakness and I'm not good at it.
And maybe you just shouldn't be doing it.
Right.
Stacey's point about the deficiencies. I'm 67 years old. I am not interested in dealing with any of my deficiencies. Like if I haven't gotten it right by now, it's not going to happen. I'm good with that.
Well, I mean, Yoli, what I think is that you have spent you've spent a lot of your life, your husband was in the military, you raised your children, you've been that supporter. And I feel in you, what's really fighting to get out is something that's different than that. you know, and
Oh, I
that's
believe
what I'm
that.
hoping that we're going to help you find, you know, is now that you're able to kind of jump in back with Christina on your studies, you know, is let's awaken that sleeping tiger in you that wants to be something different than not, I don't want to minimize or condescend just a supporter. I think supporters are wonderful, you know, but there is more in you. And that's why, you know, anybody really, I have to say, anybody attracted to the Natural Wellness Academy, there is a clarion call and you're hearing it, you know, because it's, you know, that's what we're about. You know?
And LJ, I think that's one of the reasons I was so excited about this, because I hear that call too from, you know, from you. And I sense that anyone who's involved with your program is coming at it from a great desire for contribution. And that's why I wanted to explain, you know, at the onset, even if you're not, you know, trying to become a billionaire, you want to make the greatest contribution you can. Like whatever is motivating each of us, we want to do as well at it as we can. And, you know, not everybody is here, you know, to create wealth. That's not required either. But I think maximizing our effectiveness, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting. Stacy, do you understand now what I was telling you? Stacy and I had a meeting the other day. She's, you know, we kind of came up with an idea together and I think it sparked her. But what I was telling you is that I didn't really know how I could support you, you know, in that idea, that I felt like it was something that she should run with, you know, because it was not an area of expertise, but it makes a lot of sense now based on, you know, on this, this presentation. I'm very grateful. I'm going to stop the recording. We'll stay on for a few more minutes too, in case anybody's got some comments or questions. Susan, thank you. This was fabulous. And I feel like there's going to be many more levels of this that we need to go to.
It's very rich, you know, it is. And I recently reconnected with a woman in London who's doing a lot of work with this from an evolutionary perspective. I love wealth dynamics, and it's something that I'm going to be, you know, I'm in a little bit of a transition myself, you know, right now. And the entrepreneurial aspect of things is feeling more important, you know, for me to be integrating.
Right.
You know, like I said, I left the business world with a lot of repugnance, frankly. And I'm still disgusted by a lot of, you know, what I see in the world. And I kind of made the decision, rather than withdraw, I need to do things the way I think they should be done.
I think that you're going to be part of a whole new paradigm in this, though.
That's the intention. And I'm in fact, you invited me to say a bit more about Divina Rising. So this might be a good time to do that, if that's all right.
Sure.
I have, again, as a supporter, the community and bringing people together. I told that was my second favorite superpower, is, you know, there being a party, and, you know, I'm the one that sends the invitations. And, you know, as LJ and I were chatting about, I've been very, I don't know, frustrated doesn't quite say it. What's been going on in the world the last few years is like we passed FUBAR a long time ago. And
yeah, you're with kindred spirits right now, so we understand.
So I can speak a little freely.
Yes,
I was so upset. I mean, I was enraged actually early in 2021 with what I called the OWSR, the Operation Warp Speed rollout, that I was seeking to do something constructive with my rage. And I organized a group of women with a few others, including a doctor, and Lana was part of that, and another practitioner who had some, you know, really great skills. And we decided to just put our, you know, have a Zoom because we knew something was really wrong with all of that. And there wasn't much information yet. So we came together, and Lana and the two other women fell off, but this group has continued. We've met every other week, you know, and it became a refuge in the face of the insanity going on in the world, that, you know, in many cases, we were the only ones in our families and in our circles that hadn't been vaccinated. And there was a lot of ostracism, and, you know, we came together in a way that was very powerful. And I was realizing, like early in 21, that there was a need to create like to create our own world, I'm very much about, what we resist persists. And I'm not as angry as I was then, because I've worked through a lot of things. So where am now is I don't resonate with pharmaceutical medicine. I really never have. I got involved in wellness and creating all the things I have because I believe in prevention. And, in this safe space, I will tell, I have not been to a medical doctor since 1988. I love Chinese medicine. That is my treatment of choice. When I go out of balance to the, state that I require anything, but like many of us, I've educated myself, about my own care. And I really believe in prevention and it's been working for me. So I've really had a fantasy for years about having like all of the alternative modalities under one roof. Because with technology and communication now, we all have access to everything. And then in the past few years, I've gotten involved with the energy frequency movement and all of the technologies that are coming out. And I've been working with the Healy, and I'm actually promoting the EE system thing that's happening. And I really want to master all of this. So I had this idea about 1.5 years ago to create this community, and I called it Divina Rising because it's about the rising of the divine feminine. And then it wasn't the time to move forward with it until recently. And now it is. And there's actually a platform called Mighty Networks that there's a woman, she's a mechanic. Meg's nodding. You're familiar with it?
Yeah, I do. Something about like choosing the wrong people in your life. I'm part of a network on there for that.
The woman who designed that is clearly a mechanic because it's brilliant, and she's passionate about community. And they developed this platform that I'm very impressed with it. And I'm grateful it's there because, again, the systems thing is not my thing. So that's not something I would have been able to build. And I'm grateful that that's up and running, and they have all the bugs out and stuff. But it was designed for engagement. And the idea is that we are creating the world that we want to live in with, truth and sovereignty. And part of the reason for it is, I've been really choosing to stay under the radar as much as I can. I'm very concerned about the censorship on social media platforms. This is more private. I've been collecting information about, what's been going on, and including, protocols for recovering from vax injuries and, things that people are being unlicensed for, even mentioning. And I think this is really, really important. So I just launched this, and it was a soft launch, but really beautiful. And some of the things that we're going to be, kind of taking on as a community is really mastering all of the, alternative modalities and all of the new technologies. And I have a woman who's a 5-star chef who is working with me because I'm a foodie and it's all about the food. And we're going to take that to another level. We're going to have all these retreats. It's something that I really want to just give away and share everything that I have. I haven't really been comfortable as a coach. That just the one-on-one wasn't really what I wanted to do. And to be honest, as a supporter and a Leo, because in Vedic system, Leos are the leaders, this feels to me like an extraordinary way that I can monetize the fact that I want to bring people together and just give everything away to them. So the model is it's a paid membership. It's a modest, membership fee. It's $36 a month. Everybody's an affiliate. And I'm expecting that we're going to collaborate with other groups on, around the world that have similar goals and stuff, that there's going to be some major coagulation. But the energy just, even now has just been so beautiful. And one of the things I'll just underscore, I've been building a team for a while because I wouldn't have been able to move forward without this. And I literally have a creator, a trader, and a lord that are very close to me and very like-minded, and we're all in love with each other. And I've said, this is the table, we can do this. And one of the things that I came up with, and I'm going to say this just because it's a little bit amusing. I've been very much contemplating the toroidal energy, the energy of the Taurus that is, the way our world works. There is free energy, everything, circulates. And I was thinking about it, that the way life has been presented to me was that it was a pie that you divide up. Everybody was always talking about, divvying up the pie. And that isn't really the way the world is. The world is a fountain. Somebody gave me the image of a chocolate fountain, and you contribute a little and you get like way more back. And so that's the image of it, and the space that I'm holding. And we had a soft launch a few weeks ago, and I've just been so gratified at the excitement that this is, engendering, and wanting to explore more with you and with others as I get it going, because we're still getting the Mighty Networks up and running and pretty, and have all the groups, and they're about to change things and enhance their platform for towards something that they're calling cultural software. So, and I had also mentioned to LJ that I'm working with this multi-billionaire in Ireland who is raising a $20 million blockchain something to help fund all these projects. So I'm feeling like the deal maker part stuff that, is also part of my profile, I haven't really devoted a lot of focus on in a long time. But I think for all of us, the world is in a very weird place. And within my community, this group that we still call OWSR, by the way, but the Operation Warp Speed rollout, we keep saying that we know that light wins because that's the choice that we're making. And, what I've been saying for the past few years is that my truth is that the pandemic got hijacked by the light. And that even though there are some very distressing things that I'm seeing, outpictured in our 3D reality, my truth is that the light quotient on the planet is not going to support any of that any longer. And I really think
we were talking about this, that we feel that, last week could have gone very differently. It may not be perfect how it went, but I think we're feeling a little bit more like light is more supreme than the darkness, on the planet right now. I'm going to have to stop the recording right now, but we'll hang on for a few minutes just because we have a certain time limit that we can, not through Zoom, just through the Academy, we have a certain amount of time. So I'm going to thank you again, and you'll have the contact info, and in your information is also, it's divinarising.com, correct?
Right. That's not fully fleshed out yet, but that's where one can go to join, and going to be setting up like some more amazing things. But we've already have like a whole roster of programs of cooking classes and wellness clinics. And
oh, I'll have to do some raw food classes for you guys too.
That would be awesome.
Okay, guys, I'm going to stop the recording. We'll stay on for a few minutes after.